And so to start, I just want to create some context and have you share with our listeners a little bit about your childhood, what it was like growing up in your family, whatever you want to share with that to kind of give some context. And then what kind of led up to the turning point when you were first introduced to drugs and alcohol, and then maybe the events that led up to you being taken to Western Samoa for treatment.
Okay. Um, to start off, I was adopted into the Fielding family, so my very first memories have been with the family. Uh, Especially like when we lived in Lewiston, it was just a really, we were just tight. We lived out in the country, so we had a couple neighbor friends and stuff, but it was really all my friendships, all my schooling and everything being homeschooled was just my brothers and my sister. And the best childhood you could have. I mean, we're out there on that farm and, playing in the mud. We had animals. You know, I couldn't ask for anything more. Um, I have a lot of fond memories of uh, Lewiston. And one of my first memories, and I was kind of contemplating on even telling this story, and I just barely have told the story to. I told Brittany about a year ago, and I just told Mom just actually a week ago. But it's one of the first memories I have. I was probably less than 3 years old, and we had an old tree, and actually Ken's seen your picture. He's standing with this tree at the corner of like the house and where we parked the cars, and this was going up towards the fruit orchard, and behind it actually was the clothes lines that Mom would hang the clothes on. And we had a road that went down towards our shop that we had some fruit trees along the side, and I remember like Dad and a bunch of my brothers and stuff, we're all as a family, we were working on those trees. And Mama came and sat me down at the root of that tree. We had some big roots that went across the ground and kind of just sat me down. And I could remember I was wearing a diaper. That's why I feel like I was quite young. And she had let me sit there, and she was walking off and talking to some of the older, you older kids and stuff that were working on these trees. But I had a glow that, I felt a light engulf me, as something that you could feel that was from behind me, and it's almost like I instantly knew. But I heard a voice come from behind me of a young man that said, "Hey, hold on just a minute, I need to find out who is named after me." I knew who it was, and I turned around, and it was like he was coming out of a door, and just this brilliant glow. But it was Uncle Mark. And I haven't really told this story much, but it's something I've carried with me my whole life. But he came and he set me down on his knee. I came back, and we're kind of towards like where the clothes dryer hangers were, and he just basically let me know that this family was gonna watch out. This is a good family, and he was personally going to help me along this path. And I kind of got excited and stuff like that because I knew it was Dad's brother and stuff, but I wasn't old enough to really understand the veil. And I knew who he was, and I knew that this was from beyond the veil, that this was not of this earth. And I was excited. I was like, "Mom, Mom, Mom." And, I couldn't really talk, at that time, but I was trying to get Mom's attention. I was like, "Hey, Uncle Mark's here, we need to let Dad know." And she picked me up, and she goes, "Oh, it's maybe just a dream, you're kind of so special, maybe we need to go change your diaper," and just kind of picked me up and was walking me towards the barn area, and I was trying to point back that, hey, no, it's Uncle Mark, look, and he raised his hand like, we'll see you, and he slowly vanished at that point. But it's, for my whole life, I've kind of felt like, maybe I just hallucinated or whatever, but it's through these stories, you're going to hear me talk of Uncle Mark a lot. Even in my darkest of times, he's talked to me, just as we're talking now, and he's played a major part through the strength and my ability to even process with what's going on today. And I feel like I know who he is intimately, like just there's nobody on this earth that knows me as much as he does. But so Lewiston, particularly that tree, has always held a special part with me. And when we moved, I was at end of 6 years old, coming into 7 years old, I believe. And we moved to Boise, and I remember when Mom had already started packing books and stuff, and packing boxes, like emptying rooms and stuff, before she told us younger kids. I remember when she sat us down, it was really traumatic that we were going to be leaving that. And I think that was kind of like the start of the question inside my head that I've created, that created a lot of what we're about to talk about it. But it's like, where do I belong? I felt like, where's my place? Where's home? So we moved to Boise, and which was an awesome experience. I know it was one of the toughest times of Dad's life. But like all us brothers and stuff, there was like 4 of us inside a room. We had that pool inside the house. It was just awesome. But we also had a lot more neighbor kids. We were more in a residential area than we were a rural area in Lewiston. And dealing with kids and people outside this family has always been very difficult for me. And I mean, even like with being introduced to like new people, friends and family and everything, it's, we introduce everybody, and it always comes down to me, and everybody always gives that look like, he's this kid, I was dark haired and dark skinned, and so it was like, oh, he's adopted. And then the typical question is, how old were you when you found out? Well, I've known my whole life. I was 3 weeks old, and it's just like this whole explanation of almost like why I'm different. And not that there's anything anybody could have done or like anybody was doing anything wrong, but it was tough not looking around and not looking like my father, not having my mother's hands or anything, when I, so many of all my siblings and everybody I knew had somebody, like that. But as I started coming from childhood into more of, my adolescent years and stuff, and introduced more of the outside world, it started compiling with that. And especially with young boys, are peacock feathers, and all the boys kind of like, who's the best and who's the baddest, who's got the best of this and who's the most athletic, who can jump the highest. And I never did well with that. I always carried a really strong, not competitiveness, but comparing. myself. And that was, it took a handful of years to realize how detrimental that is, and how you can't compare yourself to anybody, because we're all on a different path. But being in Boise was, yeah, that was kind of like the first experience of kind of having bullies, people I wasn't comfortable to be around, and kind of compiled that a little bit more. And then we moved to Cedar. We were only there in Boise for a short period of time. Moved to Cedar, and that's where I feel like a lot, like the sanctuary of just the family was just us kind of thing. And Ken was going off on a mission. You were Daryl. You were going off to high school and basketball, and being really busy with all that type of stuff. Eric was, he started having his friends. I started having my friends, and we were just kind of, I felt like, we were kind of separating it all. And
How old were you when we moved to Cedar?
8 years old. I got baptized in Boise, and then we moved to Cedar right after that. And that's where I really started, I think, holding in some of the damage that I was experiencing with. I was just having troubles fitting in. And a lot of times that's where I started making friends. And they weren't all this way, but this is where I started making friends, to where it was more of comparing and, who's better kind of thing, instead of having friendships that push you to be your best. That is more of friendships that, ultimately you're tearing each other down.
Do you think that was a function of some of the kids you were hanging out with, or do you think it was just kind of how you had started comparing, and a process of just how you were approaching the relationships?
It was kind of both. I was going out and, I guess, searching for these quote unquote cool kids. And I was like, okay, if they're cool, and if I mimic this or try to do this, or if they befriend me, then I will be.
And this kind of stemming from kind of like having this feeling of, where do I fit in?
Yeah, and it ultimately comes back, and this is just something that adopted people feel.
Yeah.
It's kind of textbook
Yeah.
of not quite knowing where you belong, and not knowing, like, my genealogy. Even just filling out medical papers, filling out, to go play football or whatever, it comes down to race, or coming down to your family medical history. I've never been able to fill that stuff out, and it was starting to compile at that point. I think that's where kind of depression and really, I learned to be alone with my own thoughts and my own turmoil. And this is 8, 9, 10 years old. But I was still part of a strong family dynamic. We go to church, we go to priesthood meetings, we're going to, the family reunions and stuff. But it's still very much integrated into that. So just kind of quote unquote normal. I didn't believe that there was any type of issue at that point. So in Cedar, we were still doing the homeschool and everything. That's where I really started feeling compelled to wanting to go to public school. But I was also getting, that's where I was starting to get into a lot of little leagues, playing soccer and doing that. And I always felt kind of like one of the weird kids. Oh, you're the homeschool kid. Oh, you're one of the Fieldings. And so that's where it just really started to snowball. We moved over here to Cedar Knolls area. I was about 12 years old at that point. And that's where it just got the snowball of basically it ultimately is a depression. Um, really started to magnify. Um, you were off going to missions at that point, and Ken was getting married off. We're seeing grandkids showing up, so life was just changing. Eric was starting his high school stuff and getting busy with that, and more and more of the friendships that I was choosing, not all of them, because a lot of them, ended up being dear friends, but there was a handful that I just really allowed and enforced this, where do I belong? Who am I? And 14 years old is when it really started to get dangerous. Um, End of freshman year, coming into my sophomore year, 14, 15 years old. One of my best friends, well, my best friend at the time, just barely started high school. This is my first year of public school, coming towards the end of that, my freshman year. And the hardest thing going into public school, I realized, because I had gotten to know a lot of the kids just throughout scouting, church, playing basketball, playing football. You get to know the kids in the community. So when I started high school, I was really just excited to get in there and, walk the halls I've never experienced. What school's like. You get to see it on TV, but it was strange because like these friends that I had in all, in scouting and in church and in sports, well, they all belong to different cliques in the school, and you can't be friends with multiple different cliques in school. So I was never part of a clique in school, and that made it just so much harder and just felt so alone. And then at the end of my freshman year, my best friend at the time decided to start the rumor that I was gay. And it snowballed. I mean, just, I was just teased and made fun of. I can't tell you how many times like I went in to use the bathroom, and it was the same set of bullies. It was these 6 kids, and man, they would come in and just destroy me physically and mentally. Fighting every day. And I didn't fist fight at that time. I just allowed people to kind of wail on me. And that's where it got really dark for me. Especially that it was, quote unquote, my best friend. I didn't have anybody to turn to, and I was so ashamed with, this rumor and what's gone on. I didn't talk to the family. I know everybody must have heard about it. Eric, I believe, was a senior at the time. Laurie was also a freshman at the time. And I know Laurie dealt with it, and that a lot of the emotion that she's having now is stemmed from what me and Laurie went throughout high school. And that's, 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, that's where I really started fantasizing basically over suicide and death. I looked down a barrel of a loaded gun at one time, my hunting rifle at the time. I had loaded it and looked down it with the safety off. But I always said I was too big of a coward to pull the trigger. So I never did that again. But it was a really, really hard time. And I had stopped going to school, period. coming into my sophomore year. I tried at first, and then I was starting to get in trouble and stuff, and I really tried to go to these classes and everything, but man, kids are cruel. It's not like today. It's almost like it's popular if you're gay and everything else, but back then it was a different story, and I think the hardest part is like when the few times I did turn around and fight back, that a lot of my friends, they didn't have my back. They turned their back on me. When I was being pushed into the bathroom by these guys, and they'd have somebody standing out front to make sure nobody's coming in, and to have your friends just turn around and walk up, and they knew what was happening. So it was just, there was a time where I was just, man, I was really alone, and mom and dad sensed that, and I think everybody could, and
They sensed that something was going on. They didn't know what was going on.
they didn't know what was going on, and that's the time when I started experiencing with alcohol and tobacco, and marijuana. Marijuana ended up helping, and then it did hurt. I didn't realize at the time. At the time, it was just like it was to the point to where I was trying to get anything to help cope. And some of these crowds, the ones that were drinking or doing drugs and stuff like that, were more accepting, I guess, and less judgmental than other groups. Looking back, I wish I would have stayed in like debate. I did really good through my freshman year. Ended up taking 5th in state as a freshman in impromptu. And I had a lot of people, I think, if I would have just not got so involved with the rumors and stuck with a certain crowd, yeah, my life would have been different. But my sophomore year is when I started drinking more and stuff, and it was right after my 17th birthday is when I got kidnapped to go to Samoa, and it was just almost like 30 days before then is when I had actually tried some hardcore drugs. I had tried methamphetamines, and that gave me such a euphoric, because it gives you a sense of like confidence and drive and energy, and that's why it's like so addictive. But with somebody that was in my state of mind, and the first time I tasted this, all my worries and all my self-doubt and stuff disappeared. Yeah. And it was such a breath of fresh air. But instantly, leading up, the night I got kidnapped, it's about the only night I can really remember, what was going on and stuff. But we were up at Brian Head with some friends doing meth, and this was the first time I'd ever purchased it. But I do remember asking, like, how much would it take to kill you? And I think at the time I was kind of like, okay, if I buy this much, I don't want to do too much, but at the same time, I think I was also thinking, okay, if you're going to go, what a way to go. I feel like I felt good for like the first time I felt like in my life, that I had something. But Dad knew, and I believe it was Uncle Mark that came and told him that Matt needed to go, and he needed to go that night. And I do believe that this action saves my life. I just barely started on it. So like when I got into Brightway, I kind of avoided the drug test for the first couple days, first 48 hours, and finally they just locked me inside a bathroom and said, you're not coming out until it's full. But the drug test came back, and of course it came back with the whole spectrum. Um, I even had Coke in my system. I don't know that I ever did Coke, but you know, it was probably cut into some of the meth and stuff like that. But you know, and it came back, so it's at the time I felt like is taken out of context how bad I'm actually, because you know, I only tried it a couple times. So yeah, that's kind of where
I remember, Matt, before you were kidnapped and taken, Dad had called a family meeting with all the brothers, and I can't remember if it was, I think it was Dad, that he was concerned that you were either going to be dead or in prison within a year.
yeah.
But, and I feel like it wasn't very long after that that you were taken. But how bad was it? I mean, there was like they were concerned you were like running drugs, or people were you were involved with people that were doing that.
A lot of it is kind of taken out of context because a few days before I got kidnapped, me and a friend went up to Salt Lake to get rid of some of his stuff and maybe try and pick up some drugs and stuff like that, just kind of get away. And so he had a lot of stuff inside my car that wasn't mine, like a big, huge triple beam scale, which is usually used for weighing out large quantities of drugs. And there was I don't know exactly all what was in there, but I know that bag was in there, and I know that it was full of just bad stuff. I was not involved in that. I wasn't dealing. I wasn't at that point, and that's why I feel like, you know, in a lot of ways, I wasn't as far into the drugs as everybody thinks.
But maybe he was picking up more on the danger of the mindset.
I was definitely in ready to die mindset.
Yeah.
You know, and just my use with how it brought me that it would have been really quick before I was dealing, just because you can't afford to pay for it. You got to get to the point to where it's hopefully paying for itself. And just the amount of use, I think I would have OD'd quickly, just because I would have done more and more, you know, and that's just how I felt, you know. I just wanted more and more and more.
So talk about that night when they came to get you. What do you remember? What was that experience, and then getting and the whole journey getting to West Samoa?
One thing through this all, like when I would call and say, hey, I'm not, you know, can I stay the night somewhere or whatever else, I never stayed out when Mom and Dad said no. You know, I wouldn't just, you know, I'm not going to listen to you. I'll see you in the morning. Bye. You can't find me. I never did that. I had more respect for that, and I'm grateful that I was never one of those kids, because a lot of the people I was associating with, like their parents, you know, they didn't tell their parents anything. So, you know, I was on the phone kind of all night long, hey, you know, coming up with various different reasons. Hey, you know, I'm not going to be home. I'm not going to be home. And clear up until like midnight, 1 o'clock, Dad was like, hey, just finish up what you're doing and come on home. Just adamant about it. And finally, I was like, hey, you're going to give me gas money so I can, you know, I'll come home, whatever, but you're giving me some gas money. Okay, that's fine. Just come home. I remember the drive home vividly. I remember dropping off my friends there in Parowan. And I came home. I can remember having ultimate thoughts that I need to secure and reconnect with the family. Now, I was high on drugs, but it was kind of a revelation that almost like I need to let the family know where I'm at. I knew I wasn't in a good place and that I need to turn to family. So I came home. Dad was out here in the living room watching TV. Shut the TV off, and I was high. So therefore, talkative and really energetic. And Dad just sat me down and kind of just talked with me like he does, And I was kind of in the process of starting to tell him that, I think we need to go out golfing, and just kind of catch up, and I need to talk with my brothers and everything. And he was like, that sounds good. I think that does need to happen. And I was like, I love this family. And he's like, don't ever forget that. This family's always here for you. And Mom came out and kind of poked her head out like she would do in the middle of the night, just checking on her, everything. And I heard the front door open. And people came walking in, and three very large men just came up, and they didn't grab me, but they weren't going to let me walk on my own. They were escorting me. Came out, and they said, hug your dad. And instantly I was like, who the hell are you? Kind of thing. But kind of just hugged, and Dad just said that, that you need some help. You need to go with these guys. Okay. Came out here, loaded me up in the van. We pulled out to Main Street and went down Main Street like we were going to go to the hospital, And I was like, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to the hospital, and, we're going to figure out some stuff. Okay, well, we passed the street to go to the hospital. Starting to get nervous at that time. Like, what's going on? They didn't say anything. They dropped off one of their friends down by the college. He ended up being off the college football team. Dropping off at his dorm or whatever. And hopped on the freeway. And we started hitting Connecticut.
Were you restrained at all, handcuffed or anything, or?
No, but they were prepared to. They were holding handcuffs. I was sitting in the very back of the van. Actually, there was one sitting behind me, and then the guy, like, I couldn't have gone to a door without dealing with one of them. Started hitting Canaryville, and I was like, what's going on? Just don't be lying to me, and starting to get angry. And he's like, the hospital's down in St. George. And that's about all they ever said. So I got down there to Brightway. It's probably getting to be 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, just before light.
So Brightway has a center or something in St. George?
This was a detox center. It's kind of like a jail, automatic locking doors, When I walked in, I didn't see the sunlight for 10 days after that, So I came in, and it was kind of just an intake thing. They asked me some questions and took my blood pressure, temperature, and then just put me inside a room. There was nothing inside there to hurt myself. They took my shoes, my belt, anything that I happened to be wearing at the time, and then they just let me sit there.
Was there a bed or anything in there?
Yeah, there was a bed, but at this point, I mean, not only with the drugs, because you can't sleep on that type of drug, but I knew something was seriously going on at that point. I broke down, and I just sat there for about 3 hours, just not knowing what's going on. I mean, I knew I couldn't even leave the room. So to have everything was stripped. A lot of questions inside my head, like, what's going on? Let me talk to Mom and Dad. For one thing, whatever you're gonna find inside my car, it's taken out of context. This isn't mine, it's my friend's. So I knew it was, I knew they wanted to drug test me, which I knew you know, at that time, my whole world had come to an end. And then a couple guys came in to the room, and I had to de-lice myself. So I got to strip down in front of these guys, completely naked, going, you know, and shower right in front of them. I had to put this stinky, burning soap shampoo all over my body, all over my face, and my eyelashes and my eyebrows, you know, and stand there, and they had to time me for, I think it was like 5 minutes to allow this soap to disinfect me, which is kind of just humiliating, you know, and like at the same time, the whole world's just came to an end. The world as I knew it was over. And man, I felt like alone. And it was a compiled feeling of what I've already felt and created for myself my whole life. So it was just really just magnified at that point. That
Were you still feeling the effects of the drugs, or was that starting to wear off?
it was, I guess, starting to wear off. My adrenaline has a way, you know, your adrenaline has a way of kind of, that's all kind of meth is your adrenaline. And it kind of started blurring together and also pushing it out. And still sleep was a long ways away. So they deloused me, and I put on I was some gowns. They just had hospital gowns. I wasn't allowed to put on any of my old clothes. And so I'm just sitting there in an old hospital gown, and they took me down to a room. This is going to be your room. This is your bed. Little kid about 4 foot nothing came walking out, Justin Reynolds, and looked up at me, and I'm all red and my hair's going everywhere. And what are you in here for? I was just like, shut the hell up. Don't talk to me. Came in, and I kind of flopped down on the bed, and it wasn't bedtime. Get up. It's time to exercise. And since I laid down on my bed wasn't military tight, bounce a quarter. I didn't think about it, just started walking off. Matt, did you ask to leave your room? No. Strike one. Matt, your bed's a mess. Strike two. Okay, get into exercise. Get in there and try and exercise a little bit. And breakfast time. And didn't eat anything. This whole time I'm just like, what in the hell? And then it was, okay, those with consequences report to the library. Those with not, start arts and crafts. Everybody, you know, half the room gets up and goes off to discipline. Matt, why aren't you going to discipline? Strike three. Get off to. They didn't make me fill all this out, but it was, here's the rules. Yeah. No talking. Matt, did you ask to go to the bathroom? You weren't allowed to make contact. You weren't allowed to talk. You weren't allowed to. You had to ask permission to enter into a room. Had to ask permission to come out. Say please and thank you. Very strict with everything. And in the meantime, I'm going, what's going on? Yeah. You know, I need to talk to somebody. You know, I feel like the consequence doesn't deserve, you know, the consequences aren't matching up to the action. But nothing I could do, and mom and dad mentioned that they were going to come down later, that they were bringing, and they even said once I got there, they're like, your family's bringing you some clothes, and you can talk with them then, you know. But they didn't allow. Mom and dad did come down and brought a suitcase, but they didn't allow us to talk or anything. Then that afternoon they had me start on my intake forms, which is just these, had hundreds of questions, and they're like, just, there is no right or wrong answer, just answer them how you would do it. And it was just stupid questions. If your friends go out and want to do this and this and this, what would you do? A, say no, I'm going to go home. B, and I don't remember them all. I just remember going through them, just feeling like it was entrapment, that, and I don't remember a lot of the days. A lot of the days just kind of blended together. Yeah, I don't remember really just any.
How long were you in St. George?
I was there for 10 days. I remember just feeling this overwhelming of your life. It's just your life's gone. And everything, I just wish I could have talked to one of my friends or one of my family members or I need to talk to Dad. I mean, it's taken out of context. I'm not that bad. But then,
Do you think that was true, or do you think that was just your mindset? Like looking back.
both.
Okay.
I definitely needed to go through this because, yeah, my drug use, and yeah, I wasn't going to school, but it was just, public school wasn't for me. And being homeschooled a lot, I was farther advanced in schooling than a lot of the kids in my same grade, especially when it came to like math and science. I think looking back, instead of Samoa, what could, been done different is pull me out and let's just get my GED. I wasn't able to play football and basketball like coming into my freshman year. I was having some knee troubles and stuff like that, and Dad was just like, I don't think it's best if you get into sports. So I went into to debate, forensics, which was good, but I feel like if like send me off to Chile for summer camp for skiing because it's winter down there. And what I was doing, like when they pulled me from school, before I went to Samoan and everything, they pulled me from school and I ended up starting to go back to private school. Things got better for me. And looking back, hindsight, I was like, if I feel like if Mom and Dad would have paid closer attention to my love for motorcycle riding, like dirt bike riding, and skiing, those two things I was really excelling at and taking a passion and love for. And I feel like if I would have dove more into that type of stuff, it would have kept me busier than, what I ended up doing. But
You feel like the drug use was just kind of filling idle time and kind of coping with how you're feeling, whereas
yeah,
if you were skiing or biking, it would have given you that sense of
yeah, an idling
identity
mind
and-
is what's dangerous.
What's that?
An idling mind.
Yeah.
But like when you're involved in sports and when you're involved in these extracurricular activities or music, and this stuff takes a lot of time. You're at practice a lot, you're with your teammates, you're studying a lot for this, and it's consuming a lot of your your mind work. And when you don't have these things, that's where you get in trouble.
Look for stimulation or
Yeah.
coping. Or...
Yeah. So
So when you were in St. George, were you thinking, oh, okay, I'm in a rehab. Maybe it's going to be 30 days and but I don't know. I can't talk to anybody because normally you'd just be like, hey, well, what's going on? Am I here for 30 days?
I was talking to some of the other kids, and some of the other kids have been like, I've been in here for 20 days. I've been in here for 15. And I remember getting in there, and I was like, man, I don't want to be in here for 3. I was like, I couldn't even imagine. And I had heard that this is a detox center, that the girls are going off to a place here in Laverne, and the boys are getting shipped off to either a ranch here in the States, which I think the movie was wrote about, and or you get sent off to Samoa. And you don't know that until, because they aren't going to tell you. They don't tell you when you're going to leave. They aren't what you're doing. So it was probably like almost the last day I was there, maybe the day before or whatever, that I was to leave to Samoa, that my therapist brought me in and they said, we're going to have a phone call with your parents. This is how it's going to go. You're going to answer the questions such as this. We knew it's going to be like, how are you doing? How's the food? And they said, you're going to answer it like this. If not, I'm going to end the phone call and I'll answer for you. And you can either accept it or we can just not have a phone call. It's up to you. Okay. And Eric was only like a few days, a week away from leaving on his mission. And it was important for me to be there for him. I wanted to be there, even though me and Eric spent a lot of times fighting, but me and Eric were always close growing up, just being close in age. And it was always me and him playing basketball one-on-one. And I wish I would have realized that I was so much better than the kids my age playing basketball and stuff, because I was. And, but I just never accepted it. So the phone call happened, and it was pretty much how it was expected. It was like, how are you doing? I'm doing good in this facility. I'm feeling clean. I'm okay. And I got to say goodbye to Eric. Hey, have fun on your mission. And Mom and Dad said, we've decided to go ahead and go with the program. You're going to be going to Samoa. And I remember just screaming inside, I just wanted to, why? Or just that I'm scared. And it was over that quick. That phone call was just over. That I remember I broke down, and the therapist he turned to one of the assistants and they came and grabbed me and they put me inside a padded room. And they said, do whatever you need to. There was no compassion, no. They had a barber come in and I had long hair in the back, but they just came in and cut off my ponytail and walked out. It was so hard. I was mad. What did I do to be so alone? What did I do to feel the way I'd felt my whole life? It really felt like nobody cared about me. And I didn't have enough strength or knowledge or love for myself to care for myself. I prayed at that point that I'd die.
When you're in the padded room?
That's a tough prayer. You're in a dark, dark place to kneel down and ask your Savior to end the pain. And I didn't understand what I had deserved just to feel where I was. Yeah, I was in that padded room for a minute. I didn't let anybody come in. I felt like if I was going to die, I was going to die right there. And they brought me out, and it was the day, I think we were leaving that night, because they handed me my ugliest, just purple sweat shorts and a white t-shirt. All us boys, and looking down the hall and stuff like that, there was other boys in it too. They were leaving with me. So I put on my outfit, and yeah. There was a part of me that was halfway excited. It's like, okay, where is Samoa? What is Samoa? You know, but it's where I had to pull it together. I feel like the first time where I had to pull it together on my own and be like, okay, let's get through this. Let's bring it on. But it was scary, especially, how long am I going to be there? And you're hearing stories that the average time is 24 months. Some of the best kids, they're getting done in 16, 18 months. I'm just like going.
And you were 17 at the time?
Yeah, just barely 17. So, I don't remember much of the drive down there. Seemed like it happened really just fast. Feels like we flew to LA. We left in the middle of the night, like 2 in the morning. I didn't sleep, I know that. But getting to LAX, LAX was familiar with our program, and so like when we came up to security, we did have to go through security, but at the same time, like the people escorting us didn't. They were carrying handcuffs still at that point. At which point we picked up some more security at that point, airport security. They helped escort. I think there was 12 of us through the gate, sat with us, and they made it extremely clear you are not to cause any type of scene. That if you try to run, you will be caught. So yeah, they got us all onto the plane. The doors closed and we were off. We didn't have anybody on the plane, but there was an undercover marshal that was familiar with, like, they were keeping an eye on us. Don't cause anything on the flight. Don't ask for anything. If you get a meal, eat the meal. You don't have any money, you can't buy anything. Landed in Hawaii. We had security there waiting. They escorted us off the plane, got us over to our next terminal. I guess there was halfway good news there. They had overbooked the flight, and there was going to be 4 or 5 of us that were going to be bumped to first class. I was one of the lucky ones, That was cool. Definitely ate better. We had better drinks and better sodas and everything, and we got headphones on the first flight. You had to pay for headphones, so we had to watch the movie in silence. So on the second leg, I got headphones and everything, but as I was flying, we're crossing this great giant ocean. The second you take off from LAX, you're over ocean. And you don't see it till the last 2 seconds before you're landing in Hawaii. And then you take off from Hawaii and it's gone, and it's nothing but ocean until you get to Pongo Pongo on American Samoa. And we landed in American Samoa. No terminals. I mean, it's like a big, huge, it's a folly. There's no walls. It's like a giant gazebo. So we landed and stair cars pull up, we walk off, and the humidity. I mean, it's everything inside your body says you're on the other side of the planet. You're not in Kansas anymore, by no means. You're uh you're a long ways away. And you know you're someplace different just because I mean there's no lights compared to like America. You know, like street lights and signs and stuff. It was you could tell you were not on American soil. So we get off as boys with no more security. So we're kind of just congregating and slowly working our ways into the airport. And some guy just came up to us and he's like, passports, passports, like grabbing them out of our pockets and stuff. And, you know, we didn't have really anything to hold anything. And it's passports, passports, passports. And I kind of held on to mine. It's like, no, you're not grabbing it. But these guys were big. I mean, they're big, huge Samoans. And just took him and he jumped, I want to say, on the back of a motorcycle and he was gone. We didn't know if we were catching another flight. We didn't know if we just got robbed. We didn't know anything. We sat there for, it seemed like an hour or so. And
Was there no adults with you, or like?
No, no. It's in the airport, you know, like the crowd of people had left and like there was nobody there for us. And then just this old, halfway drunk, smelled like tobacco, fat Samoan came out and he's like, hello, 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 malo, malo. Really broken, scattered English, which is with a really strong accent. Like it took me a while before I could understand him, but he's like, come with me. We went back out on the tarmac and started walking towards this little Cessna kind of plane. I think there was even a window missing. Seats, like we were sitting on wooden crates, some of us. No seat belts, no, you know, no airbag was gonna drop from the ceiling.
Mask.
Duct tape on the wing kind of thing, and loaded us up. And I felt like there wasn't enough seats. Like some of us were almost like sitting on each other. I want to say he tied the door closed. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but we're like, what's going on? And we take off and it's like over the ocean again. We're like, we're not going to make it. And it was just like a 15 or a 20-minute thing. So it's like you take off and just land again. And we landed on a grass runway. And now we're on American Samoa. And this is the old island. This is where the chiefs still run. There's no law enforcement. This is all part of, like Hawaii has an island like this, that it's still their native land, and we aren't going to change. We're going to keep to our culture. So I was surprised like how we even landed because we could see out the front window. I mean, the pilot was like right here, like, how you doing, buddy? And even just landing, it seemed like we're just landing into the darkness, and you know, no lights, no terminals, no cars, kind of thing. And it was just, now it really felt like we were disconnected more than anything else. And the airport it reminded me of a high school dugout, like a baseball diamond dugout. It was more like just walk through the gate and there was a little cover overhead, but no desks, no computers, no TVs telling you when the next flight was. So we hopped in this van and just started driving off into the jungle. And we couldn't see anything. It was middle of the night, so not that there was anything really to see, but I remember just driving through the jungle for a while. And we came out into this clearing, and you could see the house, and it had one or two lights on. There was a family there, there's a handful of them, and people were just like sleeping on the grass, sleeping up on the deck, across the living room, and they just came up and they said, "Okay, it's time to go to bed." No pillows, no, bedroom, no. If you need to use the bathroom, just go off in there. If you need to do number two, kind of here's a bucket, this is what we do. Lizards and like spiders and stuff kind of like all over the place. It's just, this was not America. Uh, didn't sleep much that night.
Where were they telling you to sleep? Just like
On the ground.
on the ground?
I mean, and you roll out like a banana leaf. I mean, to this very day, that's just how you sleep. You just lay down on the ground, and you don't really need a blanket and stuff because you need a bug net kind of thing. But uh, there was a soccer game going on that night. Like when we first showed up, we were there for about an hour, and somebody announced, "Hey, it's starting." And they turned on the TV, and like all the people from the jungle just came, and they all circled around this little old 1970 TV and started watching soccer match. And a handful of his kids just kind of huddled in the corner, and they were all kind of feeling what we were feeling, same as I was. Just, we didn't know like if this was all part of the program or if we just got kidnapped and we're waiting for, we didn't know. It just, nobody could communicate, and they weren't saying anything to us anyway. So the morning hit, and it just still felt like we were so far away. And I remember looking around that and just feeling a yearning, like I wish I could talk to somebody. But there's no telephones. I mean, there's not even really electricity that's working half the time or running water or anything. And I remember feeling like even if I could write a letter now and put it inside the mailbox, I felt like it was going to be so long just to even get it back. And they had told us, I remember, that's getting a little bit ahead, but I remember they kind of got us up and they're like, "Hey, it's breakfast." And they have these things called matzi popos. And it kind of looks like a stale piece of bread. It's kind of like a mix in between a graham cracker and a saltine cracker. It's kind of like a coffee biscuit, but didn't look anything human. And then they had like some chopped up papaya, which I never tasted papaya and stuff. So I just passed on breakfast. I mean, even their juice, everything just was so foreign and just, them drinking water out of just like, they had just a pipe coming out and it was just flowing water and they were drinking water, but they said, "You guys don't drink this water. You have to drink." Everything just looked tainted, and so I didn't eat or drink anything, and it had probably been, days since I had slept or really ate anything. And I remember driving to the program, and they kind of took the long way to where you go around the whole island.
So that wasn't the program there.
No, we were just at the guy's house. And he was just basically the transporter. He brought kids to and from the airport. And so he loaded us up, kind of went around the whole island. And I remember how beautiful it was, like how vibrant the colors was. It was something like I've never seen before. And even though, I was still in a sense of freaking out, I remember thinking that wow, this is magical. This is cool. This this is cool. And it was really my first experience on like, and where the ocean became so important to me. Like to this day, it's very important to me. And that's the first place where I really saw the beauty of this planet and the start of my adventurism, because I didn't have anybody. I felt alone, and I couldn't just sit there and cry because you're around about a lot of other men and Samoans and stuff like that like, you don't cry, I had to be tough. So I had to start figuring out, how do I get past this hurdle? And I had to look within inside myself. And these were the first glimpses I was taking that, yeah, everything else is bad, but this right here is beautiful. Let's look at that for a minute. Let's feel that, because everything else sucks, Yeah. And they're stopping up on top of a cliff that kind of overlooked all these big, huge waterfalls, and you could see the ocean and the breaks coming in, and it was just a picture could never, the postcards, you see this type of stuff in postcards, but really, it's just magical to feel it, and to feel the air, the thickness of the air. Then we kept on driving, and like it's second that almost started becoming comfortable, like, wanting to wait to see what's around the next corner. We stopped, and this is where we were to unload. And this is where I first met Brian Farfanua, which was the coordinator of the program over there. Really a big, strong, powerful individual. When he speaks, you listen, just really thunderous voice. And at that time, we were a bunch of newbies, so it was get out, get your bag, line them up right here. So we all jumped out, grabbed our bags, lined them up, and we had to pull everything out. They had to search everything. Did full cavity searches on us. Went through, and this is the first time that I saw the bag that Mom and Dad had brought. This is the first time, like, I get some clothes. And I was kind of excited because I was wearing just crap and hospital gowns for days, and I had some shorts and some tank tops, and they had bought me some Tevas and some Nike sandals and stuff. I was like, sweet, awesome. So we got done searching everything, and they're like, hey, put it into these tubs. We couldn't put them back in our suitcase. We had to put them in like Rubbermaid tubs. So we put everything inside there. And what about the things that aren't going to fit? And he came around with this box, and he was like, whatever's not going to fit, put inside this box. So a couple of us had a couple things, and he just turned around and he gave it to somebody, and they drove off with it. It's like, you just donated to the Samoan culture. Thank you. Okay, sweet. And now with the tubs, go ahead and pick those up and bring them outside the house. And there was just all these tubs stacked up to the ceiling. Put your name on it, gave us a Sharpie, put your name on it, find a place on the wall, put it up in there. Say goodbye to it, you're not going to see this stuff till you leave. Sweet. So, they let us keep some shorts. No, they didn't let us keep shorts because they switched us to lavas. And we weren't allowed to wear tank tops. That was an earned privilege. We had to tuck all our shirts in. We weren't allowed to have them untucked.
So what did you have? Just like a t-shirt?
Yeah, I had a couple t-shirts, and they let you keep like pictures. We had a tub that we took down to the beach with us, but it was just for like we could keep our letters, writing utensils, couple pairs of clothes. Yeah, nothing much. And this was up on top of a hill. Then they walked us up to this cliff, and about 80 to 100 feet down this cliff, there's a little switchback path, a little goat path. And you could just see some, they had like kind of a bigger building. That was a schoolhouse, and then a smaller eating house and kitchen, and then some little scattered follies. And when I'm saying follies, I'm talking like gazebos, all grass huts, no walls, no doors, no windows. Everything was open. Everything was made out of banana leaves and local wood and rocks. Rocks made up a lot of the pathways and stuff. But there was 2 beaches. There was Singalele, and then there was Lafunga. I went down onto Singalele, and I wouldn't come back up off that cliff for almost 10 months, which is, it's hard. It was hard. I remember walking down this, and they were kind of saying, say hello to your new home. Some of the kids went over to Lafunga. Me and, 4 or 5 of the other kids were going down to Singalele, and the guy that was escorting us, they were kind of just messing with you, and it starts right off the get-go as they start breaking you down. It's, hey, welcome to your new home. You're obviously not good enough to do anything else. This is going to be measurable. Hey, no talking. No doing this and no doing that. And you're never going to, you're not going to see reality. You're not going to talk to your parents for ever and ever and ever. And, just breaking us down.
Were they kind of gloating about it, or were they just kind of giving you information?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's, and I feel the same way with rehab. When you first go in there, you need to feel miserable. You need to be reminded of what got you to where you are today. You need to feel sick. You need to hate it if you expect anything to work. So they need to tear you down. So the first day, walking down, it's mid-morning. The program gets up and gets going, I believe, at 6 in the morning. So kids are either, getting lunch, into some sort of therapy, or inside the schoolhouse. So everybody's kind of in these follies. There's not a lot of movement in between. So we come down with the totes that we're allowed, and Mosa, he was kind of the leader over that beach, Singalele Beach. Really awesome man. Another very powerful man. Took me a minute to realize how much respect I had for him, but he goes and searches all our stuff again with whatever we're bringing down. In the meantime, they get a staff member or two we changed into a swimsuit, and they took us out into the ocean and let us swim. And that was like the first time I'd ever gone swimming in the ocean. I remember being at the ocean several times growing up, but never like ventured off into it. So it's kind of scary. We didn't have goggles and stuff at that time. Mom and Dad had sent some, but they were still being processed in, so we were just kind of out there just bobbing around. But you can see stuff moving. The break in the ocean was almost like a half mile out, so it was like a coral reef, of water in between here and there. So there's patches of corals and openings and caverns and everything, but you could see movement.
Yeah.
And so it was a little kind of just weird and intimidating at first. So kind of just stayed in the shallow, all of us did, and just kind of bobbed there, like, how long do we sit here? Still a lot of us just in shock, jet lag to say the least. There's a 12-hour difference. So a lot of shock and awe, and it's always funny with the new kids. It's because of the humidity and you haven't adapted yet. It's like you have a film across and you turn all oily and you're constantly sweating, and you can always tell the newbies. And all of us were definitely in that. So they brought us, we kind of swam for a bit, and they had a couple level fours. So basically, some of our peers take us out. And they were just like, guys, relax. I mean, some of the stories we already heard that, there's cannibals on the island. And a lot of it is don't run away. But, they were like, this is a third world country, and there's a lot of people out here that will, they don't like you, and instilling a lot of fear. And they know what we had been through. So these guys were more of take a deep breath. It's okay. This place is actually pretty cool.
These are peers. These are like kids in the program.
Yeah,
At a
they're
higher level.
on. They're getting ready to come home. They're level fours. So at level four, you become more of staff. You can watch over these kids and stuff, and you can write consequences. You can give consequences. When therapy comes, like the ones from the state, and you're involved in some big therapy, you're assisting them with some of that stuff, and I'll get into that a little bit when I get into the discovery and focus trainings. But this first day, and some of the first questions are like, how long does it take, kind of thing, and I remember one of the kids was like, said that he had been there for 28 months, which is just takes your breath away, especially just. And then another kid was like, I'd been here for 18 months, and I'm getting ready to go home, and he was kind of bragging up. He's like, I'm one of the faster ones. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm just like, instantly I know that they can only keep me there for 10 months and 28 days before my 18th birthday, and I can walk off. Not that I don't know how to get a hold of my passport or a plane ticket yet, but I knew at 18 that I could not participate if I don't want to. But there's also something inside my head that just couldn't comprehend that mom and dad would do something like this, especially like how bad this is, and to keep me here for that long. I mean, it just seemed a little excessive. So that, there's a denial stage that, I'm not going to be there that long. I could see maybe mom and dad want me to do this for, like the summer break kind of thing. But I remember some of us even talking about like some of the things that already had happened to us. Like, well, I'm just going to tell them this and this and this is happening. My parents aren't going to allow that to happen. They say, no, your parents have already been conditioned. They're expecting these letters to come home, and they've been instructed to push them to the side. This is all normal, which is true, and especially when I got there, that letters, when I would send a letter home, and by the time I got a response to that particular letter, could be more is months. So often by the time I got a response on certain questions that I had, that I don't even know what letter was, yeah, and mom would write a lot of those types of letters, like keeping me informed with the day to day and what family's doing and grandkids and whatever else. And so she would, I'd write like, Paul Kerr's dad passed away. So, it's like, how's Paul doing? And by the time I got responses from this, it was, yeah, there was no communicating back and forth letter wise. Yeah. But yeah, on that first day, so they pulled us out of the ocean, and we reality was setting back in. I remember getting emotional, like this just can't be happening. Like what am I gonna do? But I knew, I was looking around and there's no phones, and there was no internet at the time or emails and stuff, so I wasn't looking around for that type of stuff. But I knew that kind of there was no hope on that end of it. Okay, I'm gonna have to almost instantly. I thought something in my head. It's like you're gonna have to do whatever needs to be done to get through this, and you're gonna make it in record time. And that's part of the strength I have today is this ability to put aside personal feelings and let's concentrate on what needs to happen. It's a blessing and a curse.
Do you think that was developed through this experience being in Samoa?
It was starting to hone in and self-discovery of a lot of the strength that I've always been looking for in relationships or family, that it's a strength that I've needed to find within inside myself. And with finding that strength within inside myself, it also helps me to realize that strength also comes from the people closest to me. That, what I was looking for in relationships is ultimately, it's something that I need to create a relationship with myself. You can only love somebody as much as you love yourself, and it's kind of the same kind of thing as I knew I had to look with, I knew I carried determination that when I want something or I decide something's going to happen, it takes a lot to stop me. And mom and dad will contest to that and everything else. It's like when I get focused, I'm going to do it. So that first day, I remember it was about lunchtime is when they introduced me, and we called them families, to my group. And they served us rice and beans, like baked beans with a side of rice, white rice, and I was just like, what in the hell is this? I remember not eating again. And I remember sitting there, we were kind of sitting inside the folly around a table, and I kind of refused my food, and I remember looking up and I saw this blue and red lizard kind of taking off. I was like, oh, hey, look at that. And it was like the hammer of Thor came knocking down. Like, you don't talk. There's no talking allowed. I mean, even just communicating, like, what's up, man?
Yeah.
No. Nothing. Just, you're here to eat and stuff. And so there's a constant reminder of that you're stripped of all human rights, any type of rights, Got through that first day, or through that first meal. I remember going after the meal, like the last few minutes, they allow you to kind of have a group discussion. There's always a leader out of us sibling, the group of us that kind of, take over the leadership role. They'll dedicate, give everybody kind of a turn to talk. And so the kid, we all circle up and they go around and, we want to, who are you? And what are your issues? That was the thing, is who are you? What are your issues? I'm Matt Fielding. And I remember said, I think my parents made a mistake. I don't know quite why I'm here yet. And right then was my first experience to what's called feedback. Everybody after that got a turn to stand up and be like, I feel your issues are you're in denial. You're here for a reason. Your parents just aren't going to send you without no reason. You've got your head up your ass. And I had to take this type of just blunt force honesty right off the get-go and just like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And I think we were on beach freeze, meaning that the beach was being disciplined at the time. Somebody had tried to run away a few weeks earlier. I don't know where they're going to run to, but so the whole beach is being punished. So all your meals are very stripped and bland. There is no fun activity. So instead of playing volleyball for your physical activity, you're building rock walls or taking sandbags and bringing sand back up to re-soften some areas in between the high tides.
Was everybody in your family at the same time in the program, or was it all different?
All different and all different levels. So like level 1, you're in a yellow lava, just ugly yellow. And that's the only thing you can wear is a yellow lava and a t-shirt, and it has to be tucked in all times. Level 2, you got to wear either a blue or a red lava. Still kind of program issued. Level 3, you were able to start buying lavas from town and getting custom lavas, but you can't untuck your shirt yet, but you can wear a tank top at that point. Oh, and you can start wearing jewelry, but it can't be like, you can't wear earrings and you can't wear multiple earrings, and basically what you are wearing has to have some sort of meaningful value, meaning, it's either the cross, the crucifix, or, a birthstone or something. That we had Satan worshipers there and stuff like that. You weren't allowed to wear any of your satanic markings and stuff. So I've never been one to wear jewelry and stuff, but just to kind of, that's how serious, I mean, just down to what we could wear.
Was it shocking, like looking at some of the kids that were there and some of the issues that they had or they were doing? Were you kind of like, man, I shouldn't be here with these guys? I mean, Satan worship, that sounds pretty.
Yes and no. At first it was like, yeah, this isn't my bag. What issues I'm dealing with can be dealt with in other means. This is a little excessive, is how I felt at first. That night, I think it was during dinner time, we had a kid he was on probation, meaning that you're gonna drop a level, and he had stolen some food, and I think it was almost like off of my plate. Like I had a little bit of food left, and I kind of just pushed it off, and I didn't know the proper etiquette was to offer your food to anybody that may want it, because it's impolite to ask. It's a form of manipulation, so nobody's going to ask. Like, I wasn't eating my food, and some of these dishes were, come to find out, were like, these are the meals you wait for. These are the good ones, and I wasn't eating them. And so a lot of these people are like, offer it up kind of thing. And one of the kids, this kid kind of just stole my plate and ate it. And he didn't get caught by the staff, but he got caught by his peers. So after, that evening, we had like a half hour to where it's group time, and you get to give each other feedback on like how the day went. And so everybody was kind of addressing him like, you stole something. That's a class 3 consequence, meaning you automatically get dropped. You have to go spend 24 hours in the isolation tent, and you're going to be on nothing but rice and water for the next 7 days. It's pretty serious. And your isolation tent was the sweat lodges like through World War II and Vietnam and stuff. It's basically about the size of an outhouse. And out in the middle of the sun. It wasn't part of the jungle canopy, and you just sit there on coral. It wasn't soft with sand, but you have to sit there for 24 hours for a class 3. A class 4, you sat there for 3 days, 72 hours. So it came, we were given feedback. I'm kind of hesitant on this first day because this this first day really was pivotal to my movement through the program. But you know, they came up to me and I was still red-eyed and quiet, and they go, Matt, you know, why don't you give some feedback? You know, sometimes the best feedback is the newest eyes. You know, they get really concentrated on the program stuff, and I remember just kind of breaking down. I looked at the kid and I was like, it just doesn't seem like you really want to go home. Like you don't miss anybody. Because, you know, these rules, I guess these rules that you broke are so massive. You know, like they were really making it a big deal. And I was like, it just doesn't seem like you care about anybody or that you don't really want to see anybody because of your actions. And that kind of got me some praise, you know, like the leader of our group just said, I was like, you know what, that's some of the best feedback I've heard in a long time. It's that simple, you know. We just got to do good. We got to make better choices and stuff. And then he had to go on to his 5 minute. A lot of how you move up is who can give the most inspiring little speeches during, because we're only allowed to communicate small sections throughout the day. So in order to be seen and to get recognition that I'm growing and that I'm maturing, that I'm working the program, is you've got to get in there and you've got to really make some impactful statements. So that kind of impacted mine. Over the next 7 to 10 days, I did start to eat a little bit. A lot of the stuff was still just a little foreign to me. Chop suey, Samoan pancakes. They're, come to find out, they're actually rice pancakes. So they have a little, they're more rubbery. They're so good. But looking at them and being in the state of mind, you know, it took me a while to try them. And the pancake balls, I actually made those last year at the reunion, the deep fried pancake balls. Panqueques. So I started eating, I started getting involved. We did stuff like after lunch. Now we're on deep freeze, so like Saturdays and Sundays is supposed to be full of, you know, maybe watching some movies, getting into volleyball tournaments, a little bit more relaxed atmosphere. But with being on beach freeze, it's, you have to watch educational videos, like documentaries. And instead of, you know, swimming and playing volleyball, we had to build things. We had to self-discipline, a lot of stuff. We had to do physical workouts where it's just like a half hour to an hour of just almost like D-Day at basketball camp. You know, you just beat yourself up for an hour and get everybody sweating and breathing hard and running. And so like the first 10 days, that was my experience, was like the worst of the program. The worst meals, the most stripped down meals, early bedtimes, no movies. And everybody hated documentaries. I learned to love documentaries during this time. So I almost accepted where I was in a worse situation than what it's actually going to become. So when Brian Farfenua came down at about day 10, day 11, he was releasing the beach off of beach freeze, which, you know, I didn't know what that meant. But it's also, people are going to move levels at this time because nobody can move any levels during a beach freeze. So everybody in our program in Singalei, you know, you come out and you're lined up in your families. I think there's like 5 families, so, you know, almost like 100 kids kind of thing or whatever, 50 kids. And he's standing in front of everybody and he's kind of going through family for family to, you know, some level 4s were made, people moving to level 2, level 3, and they came up to my family and he goes, usually it's not good if I hear about a new kid that just hit the program, but he goes, I heard of it, quite a few things about this next gentleman I'm talking about. And I didn't think anything of it. And he's like, this person has come in and embraced the program. and has given some of the most insightful and most honest feedback. I've heard these things from both his staff and level fours, and I was just sitting there, whatever, and he goes, "Matt Fielding, please step forward." And he goes, "Matt, nobody's reached level 2 in as fast a time as you have. I don't feel like I've done anything, and I feel like I'm still in a world of turmoil, but, hey, thanks, and kind of felt good a little bit, and then being released off the beach freeze, and, oh, we get to watch, a normal movie, and had a better dinner. I tasted curry for the first time. I was like, wow, this stuff's pretty good, and, music's playing, and, it's almost like everything turned into a party, and but the step in between level 2 and level 3, there's a big, there needs to be a lot of discovery with inside oneself. It's not just about following the rules. You don't move up just because you follow the rules. You need to be making psychological changes up here. And I got stuck on level 2 for a bit. And it took a while to have your therapist come. They would come from the States once or twice a year. And that's when you actually meet with a therapist, and they send some information home, kind of thing. This is like the first Americanization that we were part of something like a program. Everything else was just kind of like a boot camp. But they had these seminars, and the first one's called Discovery. And it's a 3-day immersive seminar. Once you enter in, there's no more communication with anybody outside that than who's inside this program. And this is where I learned that I am where I needed to be. That I'm in a dangerous state of mind. But the first day and a half, 2 days, I remember like the first exercise was, there's probably like 40 of us in this kind of thing, and we broke up into like groups of 8, and we kind of made a horseshoe of our chairs, the 8 of us, and didn't know what was going on or whatever, and we're scattered throughout the building, and they go, "We need a volunteer, first one up." And we'd already been kind of being isolated, and we knew it was going to be messed up kind of thing. But, a kid jumps up, and it's a session, for about 2 minutes. Everybody in the group, you're just getting up and you're just tearing them down. You're just tearing them down from everything, the look in their eyes, they're crying, why they're there. Some people were there because of obesity and diet and stuff, so it's just like, look at yourself. And, it's just, you're garbage kind of thing. Not that you are, but it's just like what you've done up until now is disgusting. And I mean, some of the stuff really just, because at this point, people are starting to know some very sensitive information about one another, and now you're using it, and adults, and this therapy guy that is the professional, they're drilling into you, into you, into you, into you, into you, and then once that 2 minutes is up, you shift, you go in front of the next group. And so there for about a half hour, 40 minutes, you're getting feedback from everybody. And it's to tear you down. And I did fairly well through mine.
What does that mean?
I didn't like break down and start hyperventilating like a lot of these other kids did. I was like acceptant of where I was. I wasn't in denial anymore. But just to wrap this little section up, but the person that ended up jumping up last to volunteer last, that was a whole new level of messing up. You let everybody go first, like you don't have any courage. It was, I'm glad I wasn't the last. But right after this session, like we had a lunch break or whatever, and we came back, and I remember there was a diagram up there, and it showed an iceberg, and then it showed the water, and then he started drawing the iceberg underneath. That a lot of what people see and a lot of what we even show people is just the very tip of grandeur of what's actually going on and the person that we are. And I said something along the lines, and I think it was kind of like textbook. I answered the correct answer, about this. And he goes, Mr. Fielder, why don't you go ahead and stand up? He goes, why are you here? I was like, well, I suffer from acceptance issues, and it's led to depression and stuff like that. And he goes, no, Matt, why are you here? You've got all the right answers. Why are you here? And he broke me down to, I was hyperventilating and stuff, and it was, I don't know how exactly he got there, but I remember I was crying for like Dad's acceptance. And ultimately it was acceptance upon myself that, I had felt so different, even just to how I've been introduced to people, that, I was just always a little bit different. I was always a little bit different. I didn't go into basketball, and, I like motorcycles when I feel like, as a family, you're not supposed to like my motorcycles. You're not supposed to play football because it's dangerous and stuff. So I always felt like I'm a little bit wrong and stuff. And he really spearheaded through all the bullshit, because I can figure out the right answer really fast. But he spearheaded, like, all you're trying to do is get acceptance from me. Why are you here? What's your purpose in fighting? And that's was the beginning of spearheading of I have thrived for the acceptance of others, simply to find out where I belong with, like, where other people thinks is like, okay, that's where I need to be, where it needs to be just the opposite. I need to figure out who I am and accept that, and the acceptance from others will come. And that right there has taken me well into my 30s to understand. But that was the start of diving into the adoption issues, of how much I have pulled myself away and isolated myself and put myself in a position to where I don't fit. So much of it is created just within inside my own minds. It wasn't the way I was introduced. It wasn't the friends I've chosen. It wasn't anybody that put me here except myself. And that was going into day 3 of a 3-day seminar. And the third day, you really just, they keep on opening up. See, I'd been opened up by that point. So you keep, there's other people inside the group that, some of them opened up through the horseshoe kind of thing, where you're in a raw emotional state. Very sensitive issues at this point. Very sensitive on even like how people are communicating with you at this point. You're really raw in your subconscious.
So at that point, I think it's really interesting, because I think in Mom and Dad's concern was the drug issue, and that and obviously there's other things surrounded with that, but like you might have, one might think on the surface, oh, you're here because of you're using drugs. But what came out with yours, like what I'm dealing with, that's just a symptom.
Yeah, that's me of what the family thought and stuff like that was my drug use. But drug use was simply just a byproduct of what I was already. It was just an outfit that people wear. Alcoholism's own, becoming a workaholic. These are just byproducts of something that we're trying to hide or something to try to deal with inside our own psyche.
And I don't want to jump ahead on your story, but I mean, I think you had a reason or an excuse or something you could point to say, I'm feeling like I'm trying to find my place because I'm adopted. I've always been introduced differently. But I think a lot of people struggle with, where do I fit in? And they can't point to, oh, I was adopted, so therefore I'm feeling this way. They're just feeling this way. I mean, you had some instance that said you could point to and go, oh, I'm probably feeling this way because I was adopted. But I think for people listening to this, whether they were adopted or not, I think a lot of people feel like they're not good enough, or where do I fit in? And they're looking for other people's acceptance so they can accept themselves.
My emotion is no different than anybody else's. My trials and tribulations are no different than anybody else's. But because I carried this self-limiting belief and I had this reassuring thing that happened to me, adoption, I've always got something I can play the victim to. Is the way the subconscious holds on to that. It's like, yeah, you may feel that you're not accepted, but you are. I'm not accepted because I was adopted.
How did you overcome that? What's something you've learned through this experience and through your life journey? You said it took you well into your 30s. Like someone who's listening to this who's feeling like, yeah, I feel like that sometimes. I feel like I don't know where I fit in. I don't feel like I'm important or whatever. Like,
a lot of it started when I met Brittany. I'd been, coming out of a divorce with Casey, and her dad was a cop. I had, I guess used some drug use and stuff like that. It was for completely different reasons than it was before. Mm-hmm. But like I had become a regular marijuana user at that time, and her dad had known that or caught me or whatever else. But I had, even like with the family and stuff, it's a lot of the sections of my life, I just had to kind of keep quiet or hide. And when I got divorced with Casey and, me and Brittany started dating and stuff, and we got to the point to where we're going to start meeting each other's families and stuff. And I just made a choice that with her family that I'm not going to hide who I am. I drink, I smoke marijuana, but I'm a hard worker. I love my family. I love my kids. That doesn't make me a bad person. I'm going to stop hiding. I'm tired of feeling like I have to hide. And I had such a overwhelming acceptance response with that I've integrated it to just the rest of my life too. And like even with my own family and stuff, it's just like, I'm not going to hide who I am. I'm not a bad person. I made different choices. I've just done different things. I've got different stories. That doesn't make me any better, any worse. It's a lot of how to accept this is just, yeah, I guess to this very day, I don't know where I fit in. So therefore, I fit into what I want. I am this type of person. These are the things that help me. This is what I like. And it doesn't matter what nationality I have or what name I have or what job I have. I am this type of person and I don't care. And that's easier said than done because I don't care about what you think. It's so hard for some people to grasp that.
Well, it's interesting because I look back from my perspective of your experience, right? And there's a lot of things, from our belief systems of how we believe to live our life that's going to bring us happiness. You want your kids to be happy. You want you want them to be safe. You want them to
Yeah.
have the best experiences, right? And so there's like this fear of the unknown. Like you said, it was like, man, if I would have just maybe stayed with some different friends or just not kind of fed into the rumor thing, or if I had just like really focused on debate or I had focused on the motorcycles.
And it's easy to live a lifelong sense of regret. And you know, I've experienced some family members that are kind of stuck in this loop. Is it's really easy to be like, you know what, if somebody would have said something then, or said something different, or if mom and dad would have sent me to Chile to go ski school, or if I would have fixed my motorcycle and stayed with that, life would have been different. You don't know that. And it's really easy to, and that's where it comes back to, it's easy to blame something or somebody else. It's really easy to blame your mom and dad because they weren't there for you when you grew up, or they treated my brother different than they treated me. And that goes just back into,
well, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting to. It's kind of like those misconceptions, because like I never felt growing up like, oh, you know, Matt's not acceptable. I never thought of you as anything but my brother.
yeah.
You know, I didn't feel like, oh, he's the odd guy that we adopted.
Seeing that's,
But we all have those perceptions, right? We think, oh, people are probably judging me. And I guess my point is when you're like, I'm going to quit hiding it. I'm just going to be who I am. And you're like, man, people like accepted me. Like, and it's one of the reasons I enjoy being around you now, is because you can see the wisdom and things you've gained through your life experience. And our lives have had different paths, but you've always been my brother. But we're all on a journey, and we're all like dealing with our own issues, and we're all worried that people are judging us or looking at us, and we're also worried about ourselves. No one's even thinking about that. But how you overcame that, I guess, how did you find the courage? Was it just kind of like, screw it, I don't care anymore? Or was it like a realization that, hey, I'm kind of doing this myself? Or I just need to accept
everybody, depending on your attitude and your state of mind at that time, is everybody's got a story of their life. Nobody can just, oh, there was no troubles, no problem, easy peasy. Everybody's got a story and challenges of their childhood. Either
makes a great story.
But a lot of people love to hold on to, it's because, you know, my dad beat me, or I was sexually abused, and that's why I'm this way. Well, then you want to be this way. What's really helped me is, and I've thought about it, and in Samoa, they actually have you break it down and be like, okay, let's say it was different. Then what would have happened? Oh, this and this and this, and this and this and this. But ultimately, what you need to have your mind accept is, no matter what happens, no matter what words are said, no matter what apologies happen today, nothing is going to change anything than what happened to you. Even if you're the person that took away your innocence or whatever comes up and deeply apologizes today. Now that may change a little bit in your psyche, but it's not going to change to what's happened. Being adopted, it happened. Things that happened in between me and my friendships and psychological things that's just happened throughout my teenage years, they happened. And no matter what, that will never change. Now I can decide, do I sit down for the rest of my life and find anybody that's willing to hear me bitch and complain about how hard my life is compared to everybody else's? Because ultimately that's what you want. Yeah. You want people to be like, oh, wow, oh, sweetie, you know, and I got tired of telling my story, and I've never been one to really tell my story, but it's just like I got tired of just feeling that way, if I'm just, I guess, put it behind me.
See, it's like that mindset change that if all of us could achieve. Because you made the comment like, if that happened to you, then you just want to be that way. But I think a lot of people go, I don't want to feel this way. I want to.
Oh, no.
But this happened to me, and so this is why I feel this way. But something changed in the way you looked at it to where you could let yourself out of that.
You have to accept, and I guess, in a way, forgive what's happened. If that's an individual or if that's yourself. And more oftentimes than not, it's the burden that we've put on ourselves. Yeah. It's not the person that raped us. It's not the friend that started the rumor. Chances are they don't even think twice about you. They have no recollection of what it even did to you. They don't care. So why give them the power? They took control up until now. And every single day I want to turn around and just, yep, I'm angry because, and I'm going to remove myself from this situation because I don't feel like I'm wanted and needed. And just like it's been every day of my life. My mom didn't even want me. She gave me up, didn't even take 2 seconds to look at me. I could thrash myself all day, and I did. Yeah. But I want to have some good times, and I don't just, whatever's happened happens, and
how do you feel like you've evolved, like spiritually? Like, obviously you've been through this journey. You talk about Uncle Mark kind of helping you out through times. You talk about faith, you talk about forgiveness. I mean, like you personally, as you evolved through these experiences and in some of your darkest moments, what gave you strength? What sustained you?
Power of prayer. I've never let go of that, and me and Mark, that's when we communicate the most. And it comes in the form of prayer and being reverent enough to feel the answer and to know the answer. Things haven't gone my way a lot in my life. I feel that so my prayer, I used to pray a lot that, just help this happen. I want it to look like this. I want this to happen. And I'd pray for that exact action or that thing, and it never would come. So it judges your faith. I feel like I'm too close to the veil, and I can hear through it, and I've got guardian angels that speak to me regularly for me to question any type of faith or higher power. And I knew getting angry at that, though, that there has been times I've carried an anger towards my God. But that is never going to serve me. And I knew that my whole life, even in the darkest of times. So a lot.
Even when you talk about in the rubber room when they put you in there and you were so down, it's interesting that you prayed to God, like, just take me now or whatever.
Yeah, I prayed to God to take me out, but I also had a long conversation with Uncle Mark saying, this is not the end of your journey. Yeah. That we will get through this. I've been told by my higher beings, and my dad told me a lot while he was alive, but there's a couple different things that helps me get through it. One is, for this too shall pass. And another is, a diamond must go through extensive heat and pressure. And I've kind of refined that, especially over these last few years, and to be a high quality diamond, you've got to go through so much more. And I'm a high quality diamond. That's the only way I can justify and keep myself from going loony because in a lot of ways it just feels like I've stumbled and fallen and just had the worst luck when it comes to life. And depending on my attitude, I am right to say it that way and to be angry and to be pissed and to be closed off and not to trust anybody. And that's just so much ugliness I have chosen not to carry with me, especially through these last 15 years. You know, I've done the best I can to release the anger and to release the resentment I've had, you know.
So how did you release that? Is that through prayer? Is that through talking to God? People look at like, well, how do you let go of that?
When I came back from Samoa, these 6 bullies that took the primary load of my traumatization.
You kicked their ass and it felt a lot
better. I came back and hunted just about every single one of them down, and I did hand them back what they deserved, a lot of them. One almost got me with a knife. He came at me, you know, I went to a fist fight with a, you know, to a knife fight without a knife. And he almost got me. He did stab my leg, but, and not that that's the healthy way to deal with it, but it was, you know, when I came back, I was still wearing a tank top and lava for a long time. And I remember my first bully that I encountered. I hopped out of the truck and came around, and at this time it's like, you know, we'd all play football together and went to school together, so it was like, oh, hey, you know, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. How you doing? Maybe call me some of the messed up names, or, you know, to them it was probably, you know, we're just joking around, we're just rustling the feathers, but I scared that guy. I scared him. But it was a sense of empowerment. And it was the first time that I think physically that I realized I'm a warrior. And not that I need to go out and beat up everybody and stuff, though I've had plenty of.
But you're standing up for yourself. You're like,
but it was, I felt like, I truly felt like a knight, you know, in shining armor, that doesn't matter what you're going to come after me, that you're never going to get me in that fetal position again. You're never going to take my mind where I allowed you to take it again. And it was kind of a final staple in that, not that I was cured of that. This has been to this very day, I still suffer from acceptance and a lot of the challenges, just like everybody else. You know, getting this diagnosis, there's a big part of me that's just like, why am I not surprised? You know, of course, and this and that, and you know, and there's been a small sliver that's just like, man, just let's go get a drink. Let's sit down and have a drink. But I don't want to.
But you know, it's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up, because you went from that state of mind where like, my life just nothing works out like how it's supposed to. But then making that realization and overcoming, kind of letting yourself out of that trap, and maybe that's something we all struggle with at times. We're stronger and weaker at different times. But how does that experience help you now? Because again, you could point to your diagnosis and be like, there it is. You know, that's, I'm adopted, or I've got cancer, or
there's more than enough stuff on my plate to where I could justifiably yell, scream, complain, and nobody would say anything other than, let it, you know, yep. But why?
Just like you said, what does it change?
Other than me just feeling the deepest sorrow that there is no cure for this type of emotion. There is no, I have carried that emotion and that fear and that anger for so long through my life that, if anything, since the diagnosis, I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel those emotions anymore. Not that they, anger is a healthy emotion. We should feel that. We should feel guilt. We should feel sorrow. We should feel these things. I've served enough in my life to that emotion. And God, and my God knows that. And I was kind of describing to Brittany what this is kind of like is my whole life feels like it's been nothing but one test after another to hone into. Like Satan has tried to get me to kill myself. Countless over and over again. Let's take your kids away. Let's end marriages. Let's end relationships. Let's have your best friend turn on you in front of everybody. Just terrible things.
Yeah.
And I feel like this last blow is like Satan's Hail Mary. Yeah. That we got him. Yeah. But I also feel like this is solidifying in the person I am now. Yeah. That I've been working on my whole life, that even if my life ends tomorrow, I am not going to give you what you are seeking. You do not take my soul. Yeah. Yes, there are questions and stuff that, why, but it all comes back. There's a scripture, 2nd Nephi, or 1st Nephi, chapter 2, I think it's verse 16, that I, Nephi, will go and do the things which the Lord hath commanded. I know the Lord giveth no commandment underneath the children of men, unless he prepareth a way for him to overcome. And that one's hitting a little close with this particular situation. But Satan hasn't won this battle, and he's not going to. And no matter what happens, he will not win. That he dedicated a lot of time and energy to somebody, and he failed. He will not take this soul. He has not earned it. And though these things, any one of these things that's have happened to me, that these are simply the challenges that God has blessed with me for me to handle. That I am the one strong enough. And I do believe that. And, I ask myself sometimes, like, okay, if I'm not to deal with this, out of everybody who who's strong enough to deal with it? These are mine. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of some of these things I'm proud of these challenges that I've been able to overcome, that I've been able to get through them, that I've been able to maintain, I guess, sanity through them. I do believe that when my time comes and I am welcome back home, that there's going to be cheers. I believe I chose this path long before I ever came. That God has sent his strongest in these final days, and I do believe I am part of that. Now, I don't know exactly what my purpose is or has been on this earth, but I do believe I have lived it. And I do believe that I have come through the challenges that I'm supposed to. And I believe that I've come through them in the manner that my higher being expected me to. And no matter what, if I've got a day left or if I've got another 50 years, I'm not going to change that. Now, my life may change and choice and stuff, but me and my higher power and like Uncle Mark and stuff, I've always had to turn and face one challenge after another, and for some reason I've been able to do that. And I've been able to do it with quote unquote a positive attitude, and I've been able to pop out of it where a lot of people aren't. They don't make it out.
Well, that was one thing I was going to ask you, because you pointed out experiences you've gone through, feeling betrayed by friends or finding out friends aren't going to have your back. And people experience that and they feel rejected or not supported, or relationships ending and people feel like my life's over, or the threat of your kids being taken away. Like, what could be worse? Like, this is the worst.
It's
I mean, you've been through all these experiences, and even what stemmed from that with the drug and alcohol use, and people that are like, that might be judging themselves, or like, I'm addicted, or I'm like, I have no willpower, or I'm worthless, or whatever. What advice would you give somebody, whether it's
by simply acknowledging it. Hey, I've got a problem. And I'm not talking about alcoholism. It's simply acknowledging that, I'm in pain. When you say I can't, that tells me right there you can, and you are conscious. And
do you think it's a matter of separating, like, I have a problem, that I am the problem? Because I think sometimes
yes.
we think we're broken
And
or we don't have value, but
a lot of these things, to go to rehab or to come out as an alcoholic or a drug addict or adultery or whatever it may be, a workaholic, acknowledging that I've spent all this time away. People feel shunned, and in a lot of circumstances, people are shunned. I think everybody needs to go through a kidnapping and a little bit of rehab. Every single one of us. It's really difficult. I've got some family members right now. It's really sensitive. Like they're at that point. Like they just feel like they're a complete mess up. Their alcoholism's getting out of hand. There may be some drug use. It's I'm depressed. I'm not good enough. I can't. And I just
it's
you
easy to point to those things and go, oh, that's the problem, because it's so tangible in our face. But it's kind of like your story. I was like, yeah, I was doing some of those things, but it really was stemming
It's
from something that you couldn't even see. It's like the
long.
iceberg that you couldn't see underneath the water.
And it's really tough, especially that people that haven't been through like a recovery or some sort, to realize that our lives are simply a product of our subconscious. If you're constantly finding yourself getting involved into poor relationships and constantly being cheated on or lied to, subconsciously something has happened to you that will make sure that you'll never be inside a solid relationship because you feel like you don't deserve one. If that's, and a lot of it's, chances are you were sexually assaulted as a child or some sort, some sort of PTSD. When it comes to forming relationships, it comes down to a couple different things. It's usually, somebody that's been sexually assaulted, adoption, abandonment, parents being alcoholics and drug addicts and not spending the time with them. And especially with young men or men in general, it's really hard to get to those vulnerable things to start talking about childhood or how were your relationships growing up or how was your relationship with your kids or with your parents. But I would say anybody that is waking up and tired of the hangover or just lost their job or anything else is go find a local meeting. If that's AA, NA, Bible study, any type of support group, and just go in there and say why you're mad. Be the victim. If it's, just I'm tired, I'm in a crappy relationship, I'm in a crappy job, all I do is drink all day, all I can think about is the next time I'm getting messed up, I can't be loyal to any relationship. And the people that are inside that room, allow them to start giving you feedback.
I think most people don't want to do that. That scares them. It seems like it's going to be embarrassing.
And you know what? Allow your pride. You're not in a good situation now. You're a drunk that can't hold down a job that messes up any type of relationship. What are you now? Yeah. You're a piece of crap now. Why don't you go in and surrender? Why don't you go in there and let them know what you truly feel about yourself? It's not your boss's fault. It's not your friend's fault. Yeah. It's your fault. If your friend's doing this type of stuff to you, that's not friendship. Why are you friends with them? Everything inside your life is a product of you. And if you don't like it, then simply change it. And it is that easy. Now, how I go about changing that is up to you. Do you want to take a long time doing it? Do you want to hold on to every little pain and anguish or whatever else? But you need help. Not in the form of necessarily going to rehab or whatever, but you need to go in and learn to just throw up exactly what's going on. You having a beer is not the problem. It's the reason why you're having a beer. That's what you need to figure out. People can go through this life and do some of these things and be completely successful and stuff, but there's a handful of us that we've got a chip on our shoulder. We're angry. We're scared. Ultimately, it comes down to is we're scared.
I'm interested on your thoughts, and I wasn't planning on getting into this, but what you're saying, I mean, I think you've had such an interesting perspective, and I feel like religion or the gospel of Jesus Christ gets a bad rap. I think sometimes it's misapplied. There's parents who are like Nazis in how they raise their kids, and people are almost traumatized because of that. Or I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I've left the church because it's so judgmental. People are so judgmental." And again, whether that's the way those people are understanding and trying to apply their faith, or whether it's just the person's perception of what they think people are doing. But
it's a combination of both.
But when you get down to like things you're talking about being able to surrender, being able to just be honest, be able to have that guilt taken away, being able to like realize that, hey, my value and my worth exists outside of my choices. Like no matter what choices I make, whether I'm a success or a failure, I'm still important to God, and I'm still like some of those fundamental doctrines and beliefs of faith, I think can help take away our guilt, help us understand that I am valuable. I might be struggling with something. That doesn't mean I'm worthless.
Exactly.
It just means that my decisions aren't serving me, and I can garner strength from the fact that there is a loving God, or there is an Uncle Mark who's looking out for me and wants me to make it. And it's just that I'm going through this journey and I'm going through all these experiences. And as you've illustrated, you've come out of some of these experiences and survived. Because I think when we're in struggle,
accelerated.
Because when we're in our challenges, we're always like, this is the end. It can't get any worse. How can I ever make it another day?
Yeah, how could I let anybody know about what's going on? Or and that's
I feel like
one of the biggest things and this goes for everything. The person, you need to get the word can't out of your word. I don't use that word at all. Get that out of your vocabulary, period. Because the word can't, your subconscious, and you'll learn this through, you know, in-depth therapy and stuff like that, your subconscious listens to the words that come out of your mouth. So like getting this cancer diagnosis, first thing inside of my head is, I can't deal with this right now. That sends a message in my mind of can't. So there's no back thought. There's no dreaming thought of possibilities. So therefore, your brain's not even going to process that information. Now, by getting this diagnosis and saying, wow, this is challenging, this is hard, this is going to take some work, all those leave my mind open for some sort of alternative, to a possibility. So it doesn't shut down my mind to what I can and cannot do. So many people, you can't jump to the moon. That's a can't. Getting up tomorrow and facing the day with a cancer diagnosis that is grim, though difficult, I can do that. The human body can do that. And can't is one of the, I get angry when I hear it, and you hear a lot of it with addicts and alcoholics and people that are, you know, a lot of them will come and be like, you know, I want to go to rehab and I want this type of stuff. And then they start listing the can'ts. And that's where I get angry. Why can't you? Why can't you? So, kids, grandkids, Brittany, wear a rubber band every time you hear the word can't. Smack it and get it out of your vocabulary. Just period. Because there's always a possibility. Out of all the challenges that I've gone through, and times where they did break me, but they should have kept me broken. I should have committed suicide because it was that heavy. If I would have used the word can't, it would have made all that justified. It would have made suicide justified. Because I can't. I can't handle that. And man, I see it so much throughout. Today is, in rehab, we call them self-limiting beliefs. It's about letting yourself that, you know, you're not good enough. You don't belong. You aren't worth to get paid that much. You're never going to get this. And these are self-limiting beliefs. And then we make them true by our actions because we've told our subconscious that. We will never get that big, huge career.
Well, I believe those words and those thoughts attract emotions, and then those emotions attract the actions. And when we feel like we're not worth it, we act like we're not worth it.
The book, The Secret.
Yeah.
It's just really true. We manifest what is going to be happening to us inside our life. No, we're not in control of all these things. It's not like I manifest and chose getting cancer, even though maybe kneeling down throughout my life and praying for death may have done a couple things, but we can't always choose exactly what's going to happen inside our lives, but we can choose how we respond to it. And a big example was my father. You know, and it took me into my 20s to kind of realize that it almost seemed like the bigger the problem, the harder the issue, the more shame I feel like I should talk about it, the more open and loving and caring he was. And I've had some bishops that I've gone to throughout the years, and some therapists and some friends, that the same kind of thing is, the more I feel like I you know, that I need to hide something or I'm ashamed of this, and I try to carry it with inside myself, is the more understanding and compassion we must feel for that individual or for that situation. that we may not like exactly what we're hearing or dealing with, but having, coming forward, when I decided to get sober, and I remember that day vividly. I was sitting down kind of like in a manhole cover and let my feet kind of dangle down inside there, outside the road, just bawling and just broken, and ended up on a suicide hotline and talked with a young lady that almost just giving me praise for being in the situation I was, but it was that to allowing somebody to realize the amount of pain and disgust I was with myself. And that's why I, said earlier that if you're at the end of the rope, when you're saying that I can't and just, you're ready to pull the trigger, go find a meeting and sit down and throw up. And now chances are a handful of those people are going to back up and be like, giving you your space, but there's going to be people there that know exactly what you need and what you're going through. And
How do you feel like the experiences you have affected your ability to be compassionate to others who are going through things?
leaps and bounds. One of the scariest things, and one of the things that I've been scared of the most, is being judged my whole life, to be accepted. And it's I care about it so much that it's almost ended my life a time or two. So when I'm dealing with somebody that's in that fragile state, and I've got a brother-in-law that instead of dealing with my emotions with all this, I've actually spent a handful of days talking with him about his stuff, but it's not to cast judgment. That some of these things that they just opened up enough about to me to where I can, okay, you're dealing with some stuff that the last thing that you need is to be judged at that point. And that's where you're in a sensitive state. And a lot of people open this up, and it's usually at a younger age, to your parents or to your friends and stuff. And often they're shut. They aren't acknowledged correctly. And that's where a lot of people become closed off, and they'll hold on to these burdens forever. And it's hard for them to open up with other people. And it's really tough because it's really a case-by-case basis. And going through Samoa, and just, I decided a long time ago that I'm just not going, I'm not going to go closed off like that. I may be closed off with certain individuals and stuff, but I can't carry burdens like that, because it's going to kill me.
There's a scripture in Moses 139 says that the Lord says, "This is my work and my glory." The Lord has a plan. It's to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man. And he does it in such a way that he doesn't take away our agency, but he gives us experiences and people in our lives and things that happen to us. And seeing Uncle Mark, or different people that have come into your life that have guided you through your path and brought you to where you are now. Like, in some ways, we'd all like to learn things the easier way, if possible, but there's things that you've learned you could have learned probably no other way through those experiences. But all those, like, God's been in the details in bringing you to where you are. And sometimes I just got to remember that we're all on a journey. And as much as we think we can control it, and we're trying to dial it all in and put our plan together, and then things don't go according to our plan, but they're going according to someone's plan.
Just kind of bring it back to religion a little bit. It's, there in the Mormon church, they say that They believe that we chose our path. But also it's easy for people to cast judgment and stuff when they see divorce and adultery and drug use and alcoholism, especially with inside the ward. Mm-hmm. But think about the teachings of we have chosen our path. For I have chosen to go through the trials and tribulations of loss, of addiction. And these things, my Savior and I, we have a contract that I need to go through these things. Now, there's free agency, and I'm not just saying, none of this, that I shouldn't feel guilty about some of this stuff, but at the same time, I don't. That people need, and this is when we need to remember this, like when we're casting judgment on others, that these are trials that are set upon all of us. I don't like that some of them are so public and get to be so public compared to other things. Somebody being a workaholic is just as detrimental and damaging to a family as an alcoholic. But that workaholic doesn't get kind of chastised and intervened as, say, an alcoholic does. Yeah. Why is that? Those kids are still going without a father or a mother. Right. They're still waking up alone, just as a drug addict would be. So why shouldn't, and it's not like, oh, everything needs to be on public. Everybody needs to feel this shame. But it's what I try to remind people of, especially like when adultery happens. It's really easy to cast judgment. Oh, what a piece of crap. He doesn't love his family. He doesn't love his kids. He doesn't, what a scumball. Don't cast judgment. We're all on a different part of this mountain. Don't be yelling across the canyon and telling me how to grab onto my rock, and not that some of these things, not that it shouldn't be addressed, and, there should be shame felt through this, but it's not our place to cast judgment, ever.
I think there's a fear sometimes associated with it, because again, I think back, I know I wasn't here the night you were taken, but I've heard Mom recounting that story, Eric recounting that story, Jason recounting that story, and the story of Dad sliding down right there at the steps and crying for hours, and he soaked an entire towel with his tears. And like, as a parent, we know how much Dad loved each of us kids. Yeah. And you're afraid of what's going to happen, and you even said yourself, if they saved your life by taking it, because you could have overdosed. Very easy. And, but yet at the same time, it's like hearing your story and your experience, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and I'd be thinking, what the heck? Why can't I just talk to my parents? Why can't we just work this out? What's going on? And there's no communication. And that's not like Dad. We're a communicative family. Yeah. So all of that, how scary that would be, and just crazy, some of the stuff that you experienced. But I think there's a fear because some things we might be more familiar with than others, but there's this fear what if my kid's gonna get killed by a drug dealer, or he's this far down, or whatever. You just don't know, and yet that's not even the problem, But I don't know. It's like I said, I feel like the gospel of Jesus Christ gets a bad rap sometimes, because the very things that addresses those questions of the soul, of where do I fit in, am I worth it, can be answered through a faith, and having that, because we're all still gonna go through crap,
See, and this is where I don't really understand atheists and stuff, but religion, spirituality, call it whatever you want, believing in a higher power has been pivotal throughout my life. Yeah. And it's played a key role in all the recovery and all the just discovery and attitudes and healing. Yeah. That to not believe in a higher power, I don't know how you would get through rehab. I don't know how you would get through without blowing your brains out.
I'm thinking back, like hearing you retell your story about how we moved from Lewiston, and we were really tight-knit as a family. We were all like together, and we were kind of more out in the country. We still had friends and stuff, but we were together. And then coming here, and then there was a lot of change and the move, and I hated Boise. I was like the oldest at home, and we moved twice in 3 months. And I was like, this sucks. I can't believe I'm hauling all this food storage, and where's my big brothers and whatever. And that was a really hard time for Dad. And I feel guilty about what a jerk I was when he was going through such a hard time. And then we come here, so I understand like how you could have started to feel like, God, I'm getting dislodged from this.
Like the whole family's still growing and changing, but everybody. It kind of felt like we're all like balloons. Yeah. And slowly started just going off, but I felt like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh, but I remember like when you were like in high school and a teenager, like I don't see you the same way I saw you then. And hearing your story, I understand why you were maybe acting the way you did. But I was, at the time I thought, he's just kind of a rebel, hanging with the cool kids, doesn't care about church or faith, or like I didn't know you had any of that.
Just the opposite.
And that's interesting because it just goes to show you can't tell what people judge by the outward appearance or what they're doing. It doesn't always really tell the whole story.
Right. And it's easy to kind of cast judgment. It's like, oh, he's using drugs, oh, he's skipping school, he's just rebelling and stuff. But there's,
and I wouldn't even say it was judgment because I didn't feel like I
it's not
judge you, but I'm just like okay, I guess he doesn't really care or doesn't think that's important.
It was just the opposite.
That's so interesting. Yeah,
and that's usually how it is with, all kids are going to kind of grow up, and everybody has to go through
life.
Yeah, everybody's got to go through the same things. We all go through the same emotions. Just some of us get hung up on one or two of the details more than others.
Yeah, or different details.
Yeah. So
I think that's some of it. I think sometimes it's just, sometimes we make some important decisions when we have the least life experience, and even as a sibling, if I knew then what I know now about human nature, and we just don't know. We're just like everything's new. Like we don't even have any context, and I think that's something that your story shows as you start to develop context, because you don't know what's happening, and you just think this is normal, and maybe this is just what it is, and maybe I do suck, and life is
And it's hard to just turn around and kind of talk about some of these types of things, or to be like, hey, I need to sit down and speak with a counselor or whatever. And I was young, so it's, yeah.
You're not an adult. Go, yeah, I should sit down and go to a meeting.
Yeah, I didn't even know what a meeting was at that point.
Yeah. And this is why I think people listening to this, whether it's your kids or I don't know if you'll choose to share this with other family members. I think my own kids, it's like, because when you're 19 years old, you don't know.
Yeah.
And if you knew what you knew when you're 40, you'd go, God, I should probably do this or do that, but you just don't know.
Another thing, as I've started getting older, like, for this too shall pass, but your life changes about every 15 years, 10 to 15 years. I mean, it just seems like everything's different, not necessarily like where you live and everything, but in my life, it's just like, I think back to my 20s or like to Samoa and stuff, and man, that was like 3 lifetimes ago to me. Yeah. And they're growth hurdles, it's, I can see my life, hindsight, where it's just like, okay, I took a right turn here, and then I took a left turn here around 27. I saw this around 33. I had this realization, and that's when this happened. So I can kind of look back and see a full picture, and it's easy to be like, if this would have been different there at the heat of the moment, it's not so clear cut and dry on what's going on and what's going to be, but if anything else, it's made me tough, I guess, or rugged skin. But yeah, it's been an adventure. Never a dull moment.
I'd like to ask this question, like, if you could sum up your life philosophy in just a few words or a short message to your loved ones, what would it be?
Learn to forgive. Believe in yourself, and doesn't mean that you're always right. But choose the people you are around. People you're around you should always feel better at the end of the conversation with them than when you came in. They should always be pushing you up, spiritually, physically, just as a person. And we put so much time and energy into the social acceptance, even like what neighborhood we live in, what car we're driving, what jobs we have, school, what clique you're a part of, if you're a part of dance, what clothes. Man, we spend so much time trying to categorize and fit ourselves in that don't even waste the time. Wear what makes you feel comfortable. Have the hair that is going to make you a better person. If having purple hair, if you're waking up and you're feeling stronger and you're a better neighbor, you're a better friend, you're a better lover, who is anyone to say that it's wrong? Be kind when nobody else is. I've spent a lifetime trying to have, to find that love, to find that acceptance. And it is just as good, if not better. You be that person. You be that one that accepts that person. You be that one that, when nobody else will. It's hard. It's a lot easier said than done. It's almost like if it's the popular thing to do, don't do it. Don't buy into it. Yeah. If anything is like, this is popular today, just don't do it. That's just a reason within inside itself. But love the ones that love you back and never settle for anything less. Your partner, your friendship should all push you to feel comfortable who you are and supportive in what you want next, and only want the best. And you know what? They're gonna chew you out, and they're gonna fight you when you don't believe in yourself. Those are the friends you want, that are gonna kick your butt when you're wanting to sit down and be lazy. And for me, they've always been kind of hard to come by, but I also put a lot more weight into the importance of something that's not that important. And I guess if there was a regret, though I don't regret many things in my life, but if one regret is just the amount of time I worried about what was cool, what was acceptable, and it took me just around down just a lot of pain, man. Just a lot of pain. And if you want to be a professional clown, do it. If you want to be a mechanic, do it. If you want to be a doctor, do it. And don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. And what's hard is it's usually some of the closest people to you that are going to be the ones trying to destroy you. And that's what's hard. Sometimes when you have to stand up and be a leader, it's often it's with the people surrounded closest to you, and that can be hard. But believe in yourself before you believe somebody else. Believe in yourself, because yourself's not. It's trust in the Lord. Pray daily, and not just formally sitting down and opening it up this way and closing it this way. Get in a relationship with your higher power to where it's a conversation. And give more thanks than things that you ask for. Find more reasons to give him thanks. Don't be one of those people that just pray when you need something. Pray when you don't. But, yeah.
Well, Matt, I love you. We have a great family. There's a lot of love and support, and your story is, this is the first time I've heard a lot of the things that you went through and some of your perspective, and it's really powerful. I appreciate you sharing it, and whoever you choose to share this with, I think it's going to make a big impact and make a big difference.
I think it's open for anybody that wants to step into the library of Matthew Fielding.
Well, I love you, man.
I'm not hiding anything, and I haven't. It's one thing which I've taken. I feel like I can take pride in is I don't lie. I've never been good at it. I did kind of growing up and stuff like that, but it's if you have to lie, that's a form of hiding. And that right there is a red flag saying you need to sit down and start being honest. I don't care how small the lie is, but there's a reason why you just lied, and that's hiding. And that's casting a shadow on the true meaning of why we're here on this planet. And it's robbing somebody and if you're lying, it's usually somebody close to you. You're robbing them of something, and in turn robbing yourself of something that can no longer come back to you, because you can't expect love and trust and honesty and respect unless it's given. Be the first one. Be the first one not to cast judgment. Be the first one to help. Be the first one to admit that they're wrong. And
That's awesome. Well, Matt, I feel really lucky to have had this time with you. I appreciate you taking the time and letting us
I'm glad that we were able
record it.
get some of this stuff down.
Yeah. All right.